Sarah Winchester, a widow to William Winchester and heiress to 50% of the holdings within the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, as well as receiving an inheritance of $20 million, or in today's money, $561 million, making her at the time one of the richest women in the world. In 1866, William's father, Oliver Winchester, would produce the first Winchester rifle, the Winchester Model 1866. This gun would be widely popular within the American frontier. It would have a production run of 30 years before stopping in 1899. Though 19 years before this, Oliver Winchester would die at the age of 70 years old in New Haven, Connecticut. He would leave his business to his son, William, a man of whom he had long prepped for this position. But this shift of power would be short-lived, as 3 months after this, William would die of tuberculosis at the age of 43, leading him to pass on everything that his father had left to him onto his wife, Sarah. Between the two, William and Sarah had had one child, a little girl named Annie Putty Winchester. This would have been 15 years before his own death. However, little Annie would die at 5.5 weeks old of marasmus. Sarah was heartbroken, and for the rest of her life she'd always be seen within her grieving attire. In this decade, it wasn't uncommon for people to seek out psychics, often in an attempt to seek closure. Sarah would be no exception to this. She'd find a medium, and what this individual would tell her was likely very far from what she had originally hoped to hear. The guns issued her family such vast fortunes had also stripped countless people of their lives, stealing many of people's daughters, sons, their lives left in ruins. And as such, these dead were restless, feeling as though what had been taken from them was far too grand to simply let go. Feeling such injustice, they had sought revenge. If their own breaths were taken from them, then they would take the breaths of those whom were responsible. And these victims sought not just to take their revenge out on Oliver, but William, and even little Annie herself. However, that simply would not be enough. Surely they would take Sarah as well. The family that of which had made such vast fortune upon their own misfortune was an injustice to them. The only way that Sarah could survive was if she built a home not just for herself, but for these restless souls. But with the catch, if ever Sarah was to stop building, they would kill her. Sarah would go to California between the years of 1884 to 1885, and in 1886, a year later, she'd settle on an 8-room farmhouse in San Jose, called the Lana Villa. And for the next 38 years, continuously this home would be under construction. But she'd take this opportunity, not necessarily to live co and co with these souls, but as an elaborate ruse to evade them at all cost. She'd have added numerous trapdoors, skylights on the floor, staircases leading to literally nowhere, secret passageways. What she effectively made was her own labyrinth. Overall, the home would have 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 40 staircases, 47 fireplaces, all encompassing 24,000 square feet, even going up 7 stories. Sarah herself being the sole architect. No other person knew the home as she did. In this way, it would make it excessively easy for her to simply evade any evil entities that may approach her. It would literally confuse the spirits. Each night, she would go as far as to sleep in a set different bedroom that she had the night before. She would never sleep in the same bedroom 2 nights in a row. And every night at 12, she'd go to the seance room, often being said to stay there 2 hours at a time. She'd tell all her servants, staff, never to intervene her there. In fact, they were not allowed to go into that room, ever. Sarah was the only one with a key, because in there, she would talk to the spirits of the home, often asking the good spirits to tell her what next should be done, what kind of designs and all to put around, what room to make next. This room had 3 exits and 1 entrance. One of the exits happening to be going through a closet to another room. If anything ever went wrong there, that made it effortless for her to literally just bounce out. Interestingly, the number 13 appears all over the home. Likely, this is something that may have surfaced from her meetings within the seance room. Though some say that simply it's just her favorite number. But it can't really be much of a coincidence that the number 13 within the Bible is considered a number of rebellion. There are literal buildings that in the elevator shafts will skip the number 13 as a floor. It'll go 11, 12, 14. They literally just don't want a 13th floor because of how unlucky this number is considered, how miraculously unlucky. And yet, in Sarah's home, the number repeats all over the place. Stairways having 13 steps, 13 hooks in the seance room, 13 windows in the 13th bathroom. Her will itself had 13 parts to it that she signed 13 times. But despite everything she had done, the whole purpose of this to begin with, to never stop building. After a while, I'd imagine she had gotten tired of it, because eventually a completion date was set, and she was within a month away of finishing. 1 month. Maybe it was just a stroke of ill fate, but in 1906, California would be hit with an earthquake of a magnitude of 7.9. It would shake Sarah to her core. She literally would be trapped in a room called the Daisy Bedroom for hours on end. Her servants literally having to dig through the rubble to get her. How ironic is that? She's a month away from completing, and something like this happens. So of course to her this was a sign. Just as the psychic had told her all those years ago, if she stopped building onto this home, she would die. After the earthquake, the top 3 stories would have to be completely demolished, leaving it a mere empty shell of its former glory. She'd have the front of the home sealed off, simply just leaving much of this home in disrepair. I'd imagine that this was more than just a wake-up call for her. And then on September 5th of 1922, finally construction would stop. Because on that day, in the Sarah Winchester master bedroom, Sarah, at the age of 83, would suffer a heart failure in her sleep. In the ballroom, lurking behind a hinged wall, a wooden door, a steel door, and then a safe within a safe, were the items that she had held the most precious to her in her life. Out of everything that she had, all the money she could ever want, the things that she held most dearest to her were 2 locks of hair and the obituaries of her husband and her daughter. It said that the moment word had spread, all her workers literally just stopped working, likely out of grief for their employer. They'd leave nails half hammered into the wall. The moment they had heard of it, they just stopped. At the time, it was virtually unheard of to hear of an employer giving their employees benefits, almost any kind. Yet Sarah gave her employees benefits. She even paid her carpenters 3 times the going rate for the work that they did. As such, you could imagine that her employers loved her dearly. She was literally considered family to many of them. Heck, she even went as far as when she passed, writing some of them into her will. Kind of gives you an idea of what kind of person she was. 2 years after her death, Harry Houdini himself, hearing abound of stories of the places being haunted, would, of course, decide he's going to debunk this shit. Of course, who else than a master magician to see behind the guys here? And yet, he'd leave, coining it as the Mystery House. No longer so sure of his initial conclusion, he'd go in, and he'd walk out, completely unsure. And honestly, with such a vast construction of this home, the Winchester Mystery House is considered to be the largest haunted mansion in the entire world. Stories would come out of people hearing whispers, seeing apparitions in photos, shadow figures at the corner of their vision, being witness to items falling that could possibly not have fallen on their own. Silhouettes in windows. Commonly, it would be quoted that the 3rd floor would be one of the most haunted locations of the entire home, particularly hearing footsteps in that floor's corridor. And in the basement, it's cited that often people will be absolutely awed by this reenactment of a man with a wheelbarrow. People will go to the staff just in glee of having seen it, like, wow, what? That was amazing. You guys really are going the extra mile, you're putting in all this effort to hire a reenactor and all, and the staff, they look at them like, what are you talking about? We don't have reenactors on this property. In reality, what these guests saw was likely just the spirit of a former employee named Clyde. In 1974, the mansion would be listed as a historic landmark in the Register of Historic Places. And not even a year later would it be uncovered that there was another room in the home that had been built around and sealed off. Forgotten. Completely forgotten. Can you imagine that? Just forgetting that there's a room in your home? This place is literally so big they forgot about a room. Inside was a phonograph and 2 chairs. Assumingly, just because of the massive expanse of this place. Simply, it was just built over and forgotten amongst the already 160 rooms counted there. If it happened once, who knows how many other rooms had been accidentally built over. Truly, the Winchester Mystery House has many mysteries within its walls. And who knows if and when time will decide to reveal those. I thank you guys so much for watching. I spent forever researching on this place. If you liked this video, like, subscribe for more, comment about anything that you may know about it. For now, this is goodbye to all you beautiful people. Thank you so much for tuning in.